Hey right team, how's it going? So we've got another reaction today, a highly recommended video, and so many people have recommended this. We're going to get straight into it. Remember, if you want to support the channel or join the Discord, join the channel memberships for only 99p a month. Click that join button, but let's get into the video.
When the Korean War broke out in 1950, immediately the Philippine government, under the leadership of President Elpidio, offered to support.
Although at that time, we still are recovering from the damage of World War II.
They said we have to sacrifice to fulfill the commitment of our country to help a member nation in need.
And he says the price of freedom was something that we fought for with our blood, and we were going to do it again.
Authorized under an act of Congress, Republic Act 573, which was passed in early September 1950. It provided the legal authority.
Well, when you arrive at Korea, about 5/6 of South Korea was occupied by the North Koreans. Only 1/6 was occupied by the Allied forces then.
And we arrived there in Busan. I saw Korea badly beaten, ruins.
Then the civilians were bringing their packs, moving. You could see movement all around, back and forth, because everybody didn't know where to go. Children crying, and most of the children were very skinny.
All in tattered clothes, hungry, begging for food.
We sympathize with them because we already suffered the same consequences during World War II when the Japanese started bombing our areas.
We give them food. But I was saying, their parents will come rushing towards us also and begging for food.
The whole people there talagang they're starving.
Very sad plight.
Very destructive ang communism. That's why we were expecting na talagang we are facing trouble. Then from there,
Yeah, that's it. Well, people don't realise, all these war and conflicts, the civilians really suffer. They don't want anything to do with it. Someone wants power, they're power hungry, and the civilians, the children, the wives, dads, everyone has to suffer.
we were transferred to Sariwon. Now that's the first time we noticed the cold. That was the coldest time during 100 years. It was about 15 degrees below zero.
It's cold, hard to work in, very hard.
It was on 11 November when we started the first patrol between Miudong up to Shinji. I was leading the group because I was with the tanks. But the farther is about 3 jeeps. Now we reinforce them. Then followed by 2 companies, the Able and Baker companies. Then before we have to cross the hill, which was dividing the area between towns, we have to cross a bend. Now in that bend, farther, there was 45 area by the North Koreans. Example, this is a hill. There are 4 lines of trenches. So when we were able to clear that area, they started firing at us. It was so surprising that talagang everybody cannot move because I'm with the tank. Doon ko silalim. Sa tank, mayroong periscope. I tried to look. Nakita ko, nobody was moving because talagang firing at that area. Pati yung tanki ko na pasok doon sa ang ginawa ko, pinataas ko. Taas ko, nakita ko yung mga North Korean troops. They were already talking of maybe attacking. Si soldier, the first thing is safety. And instead of defending yourself, you attack. That's your reaction. You have to kill to live. So lumabas ako sa tanki. Pagdapas ko sa tanki, hindi tank, there's a turret, there's a machine gun.
That's exactly it. People don't realise you're going there to kill. You've got to, if you need to attack first, you need to attack first. They're there. You see them. You know they're about to attack you. You're going to open up, aren't you? Start engaging.
machine gun. Sa ingay lang, matimoralize kayo. Ang lakas eh. Tuk-tuk-tuk-tuk-tuk-tuk. Ang ginawa ko, isang kundugan yun. Nagtakbuhan. Yung nagtubatakbo, tinitira ko. Hanggang to the point na all of them will nail down. Kaya that time, yung mga tawa namin nag-attack. Dami nila, tumatira sa akin. Wala nakatama. Maybe it was God sent fortune. Ano. Ngayon, after that, nung nahupa niya, about mga 30 minutes, there were about 42 dead at saka about 100 wounded. Ngayon, yung Amerikano, kinakongratulate ako because of that. Then after that, we proceeded to Shinji.
Wow.
Immediately after the Battle of Miudong, winter had already set in. The problem was that their uniforms that were issued to them earlier on were not sufficient. Colonel Sir, and here's his leadership. Sabi na, until such time that you give us this necessary equipment to fight the enemy, we will not move. Well, he was relieved and Colonel Ojeda took over. It was a very sad thing.
Colonel's just looking after his men to make sure his men have got the right equipment and they're not fast. They just want to send the troops forward. They said at the beginning it's below minus 15 degrees Celsius. So that is cold. Even now people struggle on trying to get the correct equipment. It's a hard environment. Can you imagine trying to do it in 1950 without the correct equipment? You need to give them the correct equipment. They just don't care. It's a numbers game, which is really bad to see.
Pagkatapos niyan, come April na, pumunta kami sa farther north. Now, there was a report that they are going to attack the UN troops. Yun doon naman sa Yuldong.
Just then, the Chinese and the Koreans were inaugurating the first phase of what they called Chinese Spring Offensive.
Ang nangyari sa Yuldong, ang 10th city nandito.
To the right of the Bay City were the Turks, and to the left of them were the Puerto Ricans. There were now imminent signs that they were being attacked by the communists in mass. What the Chinese did was they massed their forces in the center, penetration,
Dito nag-atake sa atin.
and then less strong forces on the side. There were Chinese who were able to penetrate the ranks of the Turks.
The Turkish, iniwanan ng pwesto.
Similarly, the Puerto Ricans on the left also did the same. They gave way.
Kaya nakapasok sila dito sa amin, na-encircle kami.
Here come now the simplicity holding onto their line. Using the bayonet, end to end. Use of hand grenades and so on and so forth. Kulang lang siguro, duraan na lang. According to Voltaire, God is always on the side of the greater battalion. How can you face? You're only 700. When the Koreans and the Chinese had about 700,000.
Luckily, we were able to hold on.
According to the testimony of the defenders, piles of dead were there. Piles of dead.
Doon yung namatay yung si Captain Yap at saka si Lieutenant Artiaga, yung dalawang yun hero.
Yeah, the Battle of Yuldong was a big one. I've done a video on it. If you want to go and check it out, 1,000 Filipinos take on 40,000. Absolutely insane Philippine fighters.
I was assigned as the reconnaissance platoon leader of the reconnaissance company of the 20th Battalion Combat Team PEFTOK, then under Colonel Salvador Absede. Being volunteers, we were rushed to the front lines in Korea. We took a railroad that took us to north of Seoul, the capital of South Korea. and passed beyond the 38th parallel, where the Green Echelon of the 20th Battalion Combat Team, PEFTOK, was stationed. And after spending overnight there, we were taken to our frontline positions north of the 38th parallel in the vicinity of the city of Chorwon, which is already part of North Korea. During the third week of May, our battalion decided that it is now or never, and I was picked by the battalion commander to lead the assault. And this is how I myself got into the big battle for Hill Eerie. And I was assigned to do this with my platoon of about 40-45 men. We started the approach to the enemy fortifications at about maybe 4 o'clock in the morning. And in May, in North Korea, 4 in the morning is still very dark and very cold. When we got to no man's land, after a truck ride of about 30 minutes, we had to creep and crawl. For most of that period within no man's land, we had to prod with our bayonets on whether there are mines planted with tripwires in the rice fields. It was very dangerous.
Very dangerous and also very time consuming, having to move slowly, prodding, making sure you're being as careful as possible. When in the thoughts in your head, you must be so nervous thinking you have to do that. It's got to be pretty scary, like, definitely for sure. So that must have been very intense for him.
About 2 hours of creeping and crawling, we saw really more clearly the enemy fortifications, which were our targets. We informed headquarters that we're here already in the assault line, we called it, ready to jump off towards the hill, but give us first the preparatory fires that we had planned. These were from the fighter planes of the supporting American forces that dropped napalm bombs along the target area.
So obviously doing that to weaken them.
Time we were advancing up the hill, but when the napalm bombs were falling too closely to us and endangered our troops, I called headquarters to cease fire on that and then bring in the artillery. Which was behind us and with the forward observer, Lieutenant Cosme Acosta. He did a good job of bringing in our artillery to bear upon the target area. And we continued advancing upward. When we were too close to the enemy positions, we called for ceasefire of the artillery, but we asked for tank direct fire.
They're putting in some heavy fire support on this. So they started off with napalm bombs, they've then moved to artillery with the 4 reserves, which is what I used to do, and then they're coming in with some direct fire from the tanks. Okay, especially if you've got a heavy fortified position that you're about to assault, and he's only got a platoon of 40 to 45 men. You want to make sure you've weakened them, you've demoralised them, you've taken out as many of their personnel and their sangers and their security positions as much as possible. Okay, so if you can hit them with as much fire support as possible, weaken their positions, demoralise them morally as well, because that's just coming in heavy fire. It's going to freak them out, it's going to scare them. So if you can weaken them physically and mentally, you can then go in a strong position. You're not going to go into a heavily fortified position with just 45 men without hitting them first.
From our supporting forces in the back. And so the tanks being able to fire directly at the target, almost in a straight line, started firing. As the tanks were firing, we continued to advance to very near the top of the enemy fortifications. And when it was time to do it, I said, lift the tank fires. we're going to attack. We identified the bunkers and the foxholes of the enemy one by one, and we attacked them with rifle fire, with bayonets, and in some cases with demolitions. The hand-to-hand combat lasted for about 30 to 45 minutes until I determined that the enemy resistance had died down. And I started accounting for my men, and I found out that they were all present, accounted for, except for one or two that were wounded.
It's insane.
I was very proud of the fact that we accomplished our mission. Well, of course, personally, I was very thankful to the good Lord for saving the troops. And then the 19th BCT came in.
Appreciate with the turnover from 28th BCT, turnover to us.
My dad was fascinated by flying, first of all. That was his hobby. And when he saw that many soldiers were being sent to the front, he came to my grandfather, then President Quirino, and said, "Papa, I want to go to war." And my grandfather looked at him and says, "Well, if you go to war, then my son has to go with you."
Dad used to say, when Lolo told me that I had to serve in the Korean War, of course I feared. I feared for my life. I didn't want my children to be fatherless. So that was my greatest fear. But the love for my father and my sense of duty to him as his son overtook any fears that I had. And so I said, "Yes, Papa, I will do it."
So that was the story of how both First Lieutenant Tomas Quirino and Luis Chito Gonzalez joined the war.
It was just like Quirino to send his only son at that time and his only son-in-law to the war. Because when he said the Philippines goes to war, he'll send his own family first.
Luis Gonzalez, yung asawa ni Ma'am Quirino, pilot namang PEFTOK yun eh. Asawa namin.
He was a spotter pilot. He would go on this small plane at very high altitude and look for the enemy and relay the information back to the base so that they could either fire artillery or have other planes with armament go there, because his plane had no armament at all.
Dad was assigned to desk duties in the beginning.
Signal siya eh. He makes sure that all communication to the line to everyone has to be connected, that they properly connected, can be contacted anytime. Because you don't go to combat without communication. Signal is very important.
No comms, no bombs.
Because at this time he was married to the first lady of the Philippines, my mother, no? So siguro they wanted to give him some type of preferential treatment, and he didn't like that at all. So he wrote to them and he said for them to please give him combat missions.
My mother even said to me that your father, quote unquote, would do anything to measure up in the eyes of his father in the sense of esteem and respect. So he kept telling their officer, I want to see action. I want to see action.
10th of June, we were shipped to Line Jamestown. And that's about 3 miles long stretch of defense of the United forces. And in 5 days, we were sent to the T-Bone Hills, that is Hill 191, and hit Eerie towards the stem of the bowl where the 1 regiment of Chinese are there. And we had a 4 days battle with the combination. Terrible, terrible. You can just imagine artillery bomb dropping just in front of you, a few yards away, and then you're behind the battle. If this is the hill that we occupied, the enemy was already crawling up, and our firearms hindi na sila buputok. Barado na, no? My company commander was requesting for fire in position. Ibig sabihin, dito sa lugar namin, bombahin nyo na. But my battalion commander didn't approve it. Dito rin, pinabagsak na ikit. End of the battle, after 4 days, there was a recording from the 45th Division that no less than 500 enemy Chinese soldiers were killed by our artillery alone.
A line at 500.
Aside from those who we encountered, yung umakyat sa aming hill na napatay namin doon na marami. They suffered a lot. We were about to leave, to be relieved by the 14th BGD. And 3 days before, we sent a patrol between our line and the enemy. The squad leader told me, Sarge, iwanan ko muna sa iyo yung pera ko ha. Baka mamaya kung ano mangyari sa akin doon. Eh, na-capture siya. That sergeant there is from Manila City. And I was personally responsible in bringing him there to my unit. So, I grieved so much about it.
Well, that's their fortune. Alam mo, pati sa akin, it's just luck eh. I never thought with people, how many thousands there firing at me, hindi ako tinaman. It's a question of luck eh.
Tawagin natin silang marangal, matatag, bayani, masigasig na mga Pilipino.
My mother was totally worried. She kept writing to my father, "Come home soon. I miss you, sweetheart." She would apologize. "I am so sorry to keep bothering you, but I haven't heard from you all this time."
And the stories of my mom, on the other hand, she showed me some of the love letters of Dad to her. He was pretty romantic. He said he missed the family, he wanted to be home. It must have been quite challenging for him.
I remember him saying it was the worst time of my life. It was freezing. We were freezing. The biggest enemy that they had was the weather, actually, and homesick.
Dad never left behind any memoirs, but he did send letters to my mom telling her that finally he got his wish and that he's pretty happy that he came home alive from the experience.
I was initially assigned to the 7th Battalion Combat Team of Colonel Napoleon D. Valeriano of the Ninita Unit. Then, after about a year, I was given orders to join the 14th BCT. When we left, the President Quirino sent us off. He was at the pier.
And he told them, just before they left for Korea, and I will quote, "I sent ahead of you my only son and my son-in-law to offer their blood in the defense of democracy. Thus, my pride will be that with my own flesh and blood, I shall have participated in your coming struggle and victory for the honor and prestige of our country." Unquote. That is what he said.
We relieved the 19th at Pike Saxon under the chestnut orchard. And then we were moved to Christmas Hill. That was our last battle. We replaced an American battalion who suffered a lot of casualties. So almost wipe out the 1 battalion of the 45th Division. To replace them, we have to climb up the hills. And then when we went up that hill, sometimes you vomit the smell of place decaying. Nung dadaanan mo, mga patay, minsan 5 level yung pato mo. Well, you get used to it. We captured the Christmas Hill. Then the Chinese attempted several times to recover the hill. They throw in battalions after battalions to try to inflict as much casualties. They throw in practically everything. Parang ubusin na yung bala. It's like New Year. When you fight back in that war, you have everything you need. Artillery fire support, tank support, aircraft, You can ask for any fire support. We held on to the Christmas Hill up to the time the truce was implemented. Took effect 10 in the evening, ceasefire na yun. Well, silent, and then everybody was out thinking about going home, and then be thankful to God that you are alive and kicking, so it makes you feel good.
When I went to Korea, there was already a truce, but everything was still on a war footing. There was the main battle position, the demarcation line between the two Koreas, which both sides guarded. The North Koreans guarded the north side, we did the south side. On the lines, your duty there would be to look through binoculars and you monitor the movement of the enemy on the other side. When the armed forces decided that there was no longer need for the BCT in Korea, the orders were for the BCT to come home. But on the last minute, they said a contingent of 1 officer and 10 enlisted men must stay behind, and I was the one chosen. So because of that, while the rest of the battalion went home, I was there for another additional 1 month and a half. Our contingent was myself, only 1 officer and 10 enlisted men. And we spent the last day more or less turning on equipment, so we were in fatigues and we were not really in very clean state. While we were waiting for our plane to Tokyo, all of a sudden, there was a major with all of the guy ropes asking, where's the officer of the departing Philippine contingent? I said, I'm the officer. I said, can you get your men ready? Because there are 3 generals who are coming to see you off. And sure enough, to send off a 2nd lieutenant and 10 enlisted men. They came with stars and stripes coverage. And that, I think, shows more or less the spirit of democracy that prevailed in that UN organization, where notwithstanding your nationality, notwithstanding your rank, as a group you are considered a Philippine contingent and therefore entitled to the honors of arrival or send-off.
Yeah, that's really good to see. Respect to all of you, no matter what your rank or who you are.
Captain, or my spirit of patriotism was really enhanced. What an experience to be fighting like that. It is something that I can be proud of, that my family can be proud of.
Being part of PEFTOK was one of Daddy's favorite episodes of his life. When he was diagnosed with cancer, the last trip he took was to Korea. He wanted to go back to the 38th parallel to Miudong, just to go back and rekindle those memories. For me, that told me a lot about what he felt about being in the Korean War.
Yung kabayanihan, kagitingan, katapangan ng mga Pilipino na sumabak sa Korea ay dapat mabigyan ng alaala.
It is a moment of remembrance, but it is also a moment of extreme pride that our fathers and my grandfather saw it fit to be part of the democratic principles of freedom, that we did what it took to keep our cherished democracy. And to all the soldiers that fought hand in hand, side by side, heroes of the PEFTOK, I salute you all. May the youth, like we do now, and hopefully generations to come, may they never forget the freedoms that were purchased with your blood and your sacrifice.
This is the lesson of World War II and the Korean War, and the Vietnam War also after the Korean War to all of us. And some of us not only suffered from all of this, but some old warriors like were there. But we were happy to do our little humble participation in all of that.
Well, what a video documentary. Like I said, it was most probably one of the most recommended video I've ever had. And the courage, you always hear about the Filipinos and the Philippine soldiers, their courage, a sense of pride, and it's really showing them. But it's great to see everyone come together, and they were all volunteered for the fight of democracy, which is what it should be like. It's not what the world we see in, nowadays, but we should learn from those lessons, and hopefully this never has to happen again. But we don't know if it's current climate, but they have, from what they would have gone through in the Korean War, because the North attacked the South, they volunteered, they went into the unknown, ill prepared with kit and equipment in the winter season of South Korea, but they stuck it out, and from what I saw, it looked like the Philippines didn't take too many casualties. They're such warriors and such fighters, and it's always great watching a Philippine sort of documentary or video. It's insane, the actual fighting, what they actually go through, the amount of fire support and the amount of soldiers like Chinese and North Koreans that they actually took on. It was an insane war. But I hope you enjoyed the video. Let us know what you want to see in the future. Comment below, click the subscription button, and I'll see you soon.